seen some quantities of gold.
It shows gold.
Yeah, it's there.
Just a few weeks ago, when Terry Matheson, a skilled geologist, and Charles Barkhouse watched their drilling machine with so much focus that their eyes could have bored holes in it, they had no idea they would give the Legina brothers the news of the century that same day.
But on some level, that's what makes this very interesting. Right?
Yeah.
They were trying to reach a possible gold mine buried deep underground in Oak Island, between 80 to 120 feet below the surface.
I'm looking for this borehole to penetrate a treasure vault.
Just as the machine was making progress, Mike Tedford, the drilling expert, rushed to them with an absolutely terrifying announcement. He had hit something at a 90-foot mark. What did he find that was so shocking that the U.S. government, led by Joe Biden, had to shut down Oak Island? Watch this video until the end because you're about to have your mind blown. The recent gold discovery. Although it wasn't technically gold Mike found just last month, it was a discovery that would go down in history. Charles and Terry immediately bombarded Mike with questions, eager to know if he had found something in the hollow space 90 feet underground. Mike confirmed their hopes, and the team did not see his news coming. Mike told the team he had found a wide, empty space deep underground. Charles quickly suggested contacting Rick and Marty Legina, experts in the field, to join the effort. The team sprang into action, and soon after Charles's call, Rick and Marty eagerly arrived on the scene. Rick was particularly excited as they were drilling in the exact spot where the treasure was believed to be hidden. This treasure zone, right in the center of DN 11.5, was unlike any other. It was a gold mine waiting to be found, with high gold values, many air pockets, and dark voids. The team then named it after its location. Rick gathered his crew to discuss the latest developments. It was clear that this find was anything but ordinary, and this was why the U.S. government, led by Joe Biden, immediately made the area out of reach to the public. Mike Tedford said the moment his drilling rods suddenly broke through something at that depth of about 90 feet, it was as if they had entered an emptiness, disappearing from view about 1.5 feet beyond his reach. This discovery and the team's investigation was shown on Rick and Marty's show, The Curse of Oak Island. The TV show The Curse of Oak Island is about two brothers, Marty and Rick Legina, who are on a mission to find a treasure that is said to be hidden on an island called Oak Island. The brothers explore the island and talk about its history, the things they've found, and the different ideas people have about the island. When the show first started, the brothers were part of a small team that included some other people like Dan and Dave Blankenship, Craig Tester, and Charles Barkhouse. Over time, the team got bigger and included specialists like Terry Matheson, Laird Niven, and Gary Drayton, who were brought in to help with specific tasks, but ended up joining the team full-time.
We're only about 8 feet northwest off the garden shack.
Okay.
You got to remember, we're looking for a room. We're looking for a vault. This one might tell the tale.
All right, let's get out of the way.
Before recently finding gold, over the years, the Legina brothers and their team have dug up an old Spanish coin from the 1600s, a sword from ancient Rome, a piece of a manuscript from the 1100s, a piece of an old book, and a tool used to bind books. They also found a piece of sheepskin with writing on it that looked like it was from the Middle Ages. The team also found a piece of a human bone that came from the Middle East, a lead cross that was made between 1200 and 1700, a brooch made of rhodolite garnet that was 400 to 500 years old, a metal hinge, and what they thought was a piece of an old Roman shipwreck. They found more things like ring bolts, ox shoes, a metal panel, and a carved stone slab that was similar to others found on the island. The recent discovery in the Oak Island money pit sparked widespread interest, and everyone was eager to learn more about the story behind the island's centuries-old mystery. This made them discover that it wasn't the first time a team of explorers were in search of something unexpected on the island. It all started in the late 1700s. Writers and researchers started to take an interest in the island after hearing the mysteries of the island passed down generations by word of mouth. The first written record of treasure on Oak Island was made by a settler named Daniel McGinnis in 1857. It took 5 more years for someone who was said to be one of the original diggers to come forward and share their side of the story. This included what happened when the Onslow and Truro Company got involved. Before this, there were only rumors and unconfirmed stories about treasure on Oak Island. The original story about Oak Island was first written down in 1863 and came from early settlers. According to the story, a sailor who was part of Captain Kidd's crew claimed that a treasure worth 2 million euros was buried on the island. This story was passed down through the years and sparked the imagination of many people. One of these people was Daniel McGinnis, who was looking for a place to start a farm around 1799. While searching, he came across a strange depression in the ground. McGinnis thought this might be the spot where Captain Kidd's treasure was buried, just like the old sailor had said. He enlisted the help of two friends, John Smith and Anthony Vaughan, and together they started digging. After finding flat stones about 2 feet underground, it dawned on them that this might be the real deal. As the story goes, Daniel McGinnis and his friends dug deeper and found oak platforms at regular intervals every 10 feet. Earlier versions of the story just mentioned strange marks at these spots, but later accounts add more details. The walls of the pit had scrape marks from tools, and the earth was loose and easy to dig through, unlike the hard-packed soil around it.
This is much thinner here.
And that could be an upright piece.
It's cool. It's very cool.
The three men, or four depending on the version you hear, dug down to 30 feet before stopping. Some say they were too scared to keep going, while others claim they just couldn't dig anymore. In one version, all four were teenagers when they started digging in 1795. They found the depression while fishing and discovered the oak platforms, but eventually gave up when they couldn't dig any further. Around 1802, a group called the Onslow Company traveled from central Nova Scotia to Oak Island in search of rumored hidden riches. They resumed digging, finding layers of logs about every 10 feet, as well as charcoal, putty, coconut fiber, and a large stone with mysterious symbols. They dug down to around 90 feet, but their progress was halted when the pit unexpectedly filled with 60 feet of water. The Onslow Company's excavation efforts were eventually abandoned because of the flooding. Even with their attempts to access the treasure from a different angle by digging a second tunnel, they still met another flood. The Truro Company, formed by investors in 1849, was the last major group to search for treasure on Oak Island before the era of published records. They restarted the excavation, but unfortunately, the pit flooded again at the 86-foot mark. Undeterred, they decided to try a new approach by drilling 5 holes into the original shaft using a special tool called a pod auger. The auger broke through a spruce platform at 98 feet and then hit layers of oak, metal fragments, another spruce layer, and finally clay for 7 feet. When they drilled into the platform twice, they brought metal pieces, wood, and coconut fiber to the surface. The Truro Company dug a new shaft, 109 feet deep, northwest of the original one. They tried to connect it to the treasure by digging a tunnel, but once again, seawater flooded the shaft. The workers realized that the water was linked to the ocean because the water level in the shaft rose and fell with the tides.
Look at that thing.
It's huge.
Oh, yeah.
That's quite intriguing. There's a break right here, and then it picks up again right there.
The company then focused its efforts on excavating a nearby cove called Smith's Cove. There, they found a system of tunnels that were likely used to flood the shafts. It seemed that the treasure was protected by a clever system that prevented anyone from reaching it. The Truro Company dug one last shaft, 118 feet deep, with a tunnel leading underneath the original shaft. But while they were digging this new shaft, the bottom of the original shaft caved in. People thought that the treasure might have fallen into a deep hole through the new shaft, which is why the new shaft flooded too. The Truro Company didn't have enough money to keep going, so they stopped their search in 1851. They had tried many ways to find the treasure, but none of them worked. Even though they dug many shafts and tunnels, the flood system kept filling them with water. In the end, the company ran out of money and had to give up on their search for the treasure on Oak Island. More details about what happened on Oak Island were published for the first time on October 16, 1862, when Anthony Vaughan shared his experiences with the Liverpool Transcript. Vaughan's account included information about the activities of the Onslow and Truro companies. including their encounters with mysterious stone and wooden platforms, as well as the discovery of metal fragments. These articles were later reprinted in other newspapers, such as the Nova Scotian and the British Colonist, and were even mentioned in a book called A History of Lunenburg County in 1895. In 1861, a group called the Oak Island Association tried to dig up the treasure. They dug the original hole deeper to 88 feet and made 2 new holes nearby. They were trying to find a tunnel that was thought to be flooding the area, but one of the new holes missed it. The other new hole connected to the original hole at a depth of 105 feet, but both holes flooded anyway. At one point, a wooden platform in the original hole collapsed, causing the next 2 platforms to fall as well. This meant that any treasure was now buried even deeper, about 119 feet down, along with a large amount of lumber. Tragically, a man died in an accident that fell when a machine used to pump water out of the hole exploded. This was the first of 6 deaths that would happen during excavations on Oak Island. That's not all. More past mysterious explorations of the island. A book called Rambles Among the Blue Noses mentioned an explosion on Oak Island in 1863. But it wasn't until 5 years later that it was revealed that someone had died in the accident. In the spring of 1862, the treasure hunters dug a new shaft, 107 feet deep, parallel to the original one. They connected the 2 shafts and tried to pump out the water from the original shaft, but the water kept rising. Even though they couldn't keep up with the flooding, they were able to recover some tools that had been left behind by previous treasure hunters. The Oak Island Association also tried to block the flood tunnels at Smith's Cove by digging some new shafts. They hoped to seal off the tunnels and stop the flooding, but their efforts were unsuccessful. Regardless of the issues, the treasure hunters continued to search for the strange treasure. The treasure hunters tried many times, but the ocean always won. They built barriers to keep the water out, but the tide kept coming back in. In 1864, they made a last try to reach the treasure, but the water flooded in again. The salt water was making the walls of the original hole weak, and some workers were too scared to go inside. Experts looked at the hole and said it was too dangerous to use. The company had spent all its money and had nothing to show for it. They gave up on finding the treasure and left the island. The treasure, if it was ever there, was still hidden. In 1866, a new group called the Oak Island El Dorado Company, also known as the Halifax Company, was formed to search for the treasure on Oak Island. By this time, the island had many holes and tunnels dug by previous treasure hunters. The company first tried to block the flood tunnels from Smith's Cove, but it didn't work.
This is packed with stones right here, and just next to it was, virgin soil.
So they decided to focus on the main shaft, where the treasure was believed to be hidden. The company drilled some exploratory holes and found some wood pieces, coconut fiber, soft clay, and blue mud, but they didn't find anything valuable or interesting. After a year of searching, they gave up in 1867, leaving the treasure hunt unsolved. In 1896, a strange group came to Oak Island with special equipment, including steam pumps and drills. They tried to remove the water from one of the flooded shafts, but it didn't work, but they did manage to collect some samples from the shaft. One of these samples allegedly contained a small piece of parchment made from sheepskin. The parchment had 2 letters written on it in Indian ink, which looked like VI or Y. Then tragedy struck on March 26, 1897. A worker named Maynard Kaiser fell to his death, becoming the second person to die during the treasure hunt. The group continued their efforts. In 1898, they poured red paint into the flooded pit. This revealed 3 hidden holes around the island, which were likely exit points for the floodwater. Between 1928 to 1939, William Chappell and Gilbert Hedden explored the island too, but mostly ended up finding dimension information about it. Then researchers and explorers gave up going back to the island. Then suddenly, 20 years later, someone visited the island. In 1959, Robert Restall, his 18-year-old son, and their partner Carl Gracer arrived at Oak Island after making a deal with one of the landowners. 6 years later, they attempted to block a tunnel in Smith's Cove that was thought to let seawater in. They dug a hole 27 feet deep, and their adventure was even written about in a magazine called Reader's Digest. But on August 17th, tragedy struck. Robert Restel inhaled dangerous gases and fell unconscious. His son tried to rescue him, but also passed out. Carl Gracer, Cyril Hiltz, and Andy DeMont tried to save them, but unfortunately, only DeMont was rescued. Robert Restel, his son Carl Gracer, and Cyril Hiltz lost their lives in the accident. Edward White, a visitor to the site, bravely tried to help, but was only able to rescue DeMont. Robert Dunfield rented a part of Oak Island and started digging a large hole, which he made 134 feet deep and 100 feet wide. He used a powerful crane with a big bucket to dig the hole. To get the crane to the island, he had to build a road connecting the island to the mainland, which still exists today. Dunfield worked on the hole for a while.
Events took a bizarre turn. The book's author came forward and claimed that he had fabricated the Kidd map. Was he trying to conceal his sources? Or was the correlation between the map and Oak Island really an incredible coincidence?
But his rental agreement ended on August 1966, so he had to stop digging. In 1967, 4 men named Daniel Blankenship, David Tobias, Robert Dunfield, and Fred Nolan teamed up to search for treasure on Oak Island. 2 years later, Blankenship and Tobias bought most of the island and started a new group called Triton Alliance. They also invited some of the people who used to own parts of the island, like Mel Chappell, to join their group. In 1971, the Triton Alliance dug a very deep hole called Borehole 10X. This hole went all the way down to the solid rock under the island, and it was strong enough to hold water out. The workers used a big steel tube to make sure the hole didn't collapse. Blankenship and Tobias used cameras to explore the deep hole. They thought they saw old chests, bones, and tools, but the pictures weren't clear. The hole fell in, and they had to stop digging. They dug again, but didn't find anything. They stopped because they ran out of money and had disagreements. Other people searched the hole in 2016, but found nothing. There were legal battles over who owned parts of the island, and it was even put up for sale in 2005. In 1996, Robert Young bought 4 acres of land on Oak Island from a man named Fred Nolan. This land was special because it was the only part of the island that hadn't been dug up or searched for treasure. Robert Young owned this land until he passed away in 2020, and then it was passed down to his family. Then in 2002, it was the era of the Legina brothers. In 2006, Rick and Marty Legina from Michigan bought half of Oak Island Tours from David Tobias.
I was up in the cabin, and I know it was after lunch, and I was expecting my husband to come up any time.
The Legina brothers and Dan Blankenship, who owned the other half of the company, teamed up to search for hidden treasure on Oak Island. The Legina group had already bought a section of the island called Lot 25 from Tobias the year before for $230,000. The Legina group and Blankenship planned to work together to search for treasure and expose the secrets of Oak Island. They wanted to find out what was hidden on the island and solve the mystery that had confused people for so long. And who would have thought they eventually would? In July 2010, the people in charge of Oak Island Tours, including Dan Blankenship, announced on their website that they had gotten a special license from the government of Nova Scotia. This license allowed them to search for treasure on the island until the end of 2010. This was a big deal because it meant they could keep looking for the treasure that many people believed was hidden on the island. The special license expired at the end of 2010, but the government replaced it with a new law called the Oak Island Treasure Act. This law allowed treasure hunting to continue on the island as long as the hunters followed the rules and got a license from the government. The Legina brothers, Rick and Marty, have been searching for treasure on Oak Island, and their adventures have been featured on a reality TV show called The Curse of Oak Island since 2014. From the start, it was clear that the Legina brothers' gold finding was no ordinary discovery. Mike Redford's rods had burst through something, but it seemed to have suddenly vanished deep into the hole out of reach. It appeared things had taken an unexpected turn for them, the perfectly aligned coordinates. Terry, known for his sharp observation skills, saw that the coordinates DN 11.5, DN 12.5, and DN 13.5 were perfectly aligned from east to west. This alignment made them wonder, could these coordinates be part of a hidden structure, buried 94 feet underwater? The team wondered if they had found another piece of this mysterious building, and if it was connected to the gold they had found nearby. The challenge was to fit the pieces together and determine if Terry's hunch was correct. The scientific evidence they had gathered suggested they were on the right track, and a clear sign supported this claim. But there was a problem. The team couldn't rely solely on their instincts to prove their theory. They needed concrete evidence to support their claim. The moment of truth finally arrived as the team gathered to hear the long-awaited findings. The room was filled with a mix of tension and optimism. After conducting an XRF analysis on DN 11.5, they collected data that matched their expectations. Emma, a very skilled archaeometallurgy expert, spent extensive time researching and concluded the structure they discovered was definitely a tunnel. The team used a special tool called an XRF spectrometer to analyze a sample of dry wood they found along the way. They wanted to learn more about their discovery. What did they find out? Emma discovered the usual elements found on Oak Island, like iron, manganese, titanium, calcium, potassium, and aluminum. She carefully studied the results, considering all possibilities. But then something surprising happened. They found gold. The team was more excited than they could have ever imagined. They had to talk to Emma about it to make sure it wasn't just a strange mistake in the results. Was the gold really there? Or was it just something odd? They needed to know for sure. Emma shared her findings with the team, confirming with a happy smile that gold was indeed the unusual element that stood out from the rest of the data. After further examination of the sample, they found something out. The gold content was estimated to be around 0.04% of the total weight, which was a staggering finding. This revelation sent shockwaves through the team. Considering that the sample was just a small, randomly selected piece of what they had found, it led them to an exciting guess. There could be a large amount of gold hidden within their discovery. Rick couldn't help but think that these unusual findings might be the key to finding the long-lost treasure. As more information came to light, the teams got more optimistic. The discoveries allowed the team to explore not one, but two exciting areas: wood and water. It was like a double dose of curiosity, leading to a groundbreaking finding. The sample's 0.04% gold concentration was only the beginning. Other factors added to the excitement. The team suspected they had stumbled upon a crucial piece of information that could guide them forward. The study provided evidence that supported their hopes, increasing their anticipation. The wood sample had weird characteristics, and the presence of gold was undeniable. After a long and tiring journey, the team finally had solid proof that their hard work had paid off.
All those are expected materials from our Oak Island. We have a lot of iron, manganese, titanium, calcium, potassium, aluminum. So these are all common things. Those are all what I would expect.
Their happiness was obvious. They recognized that the laboratory was just one part of the mystery, and that answers could be found in other places as well. Rick encouraged the team to continue collecting samples and conducting analyses, exploring every possible lead. Determined to leave no stone unturned, they combined scientific investigation with their own exploration, knowing that the answers they sought could come from either approach. Their treasure hunt on Oak Island had always been an exciting adventure they had always anticipated. Now, with solid evidence in hand, they felt closer than ever to revealing the secrets that lay beneath the garden shaft, and their excitement grew with every step forward. Every new find and hidden space they discovered gave them fresh hope that they would eventually expose the island's deep secrets. Even though they knew many others had tried and failed before them, their enthusiasm did not falter, and in the end, it paid off. They had struck gold. What's your opinion on the Legina brothers finding gold on Oak Island? Did you see it coming? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed watching this video, you can check out our other uploads. Before you go, don't forget to leave a like, share the video with your family and friends, and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss our next updates.